we want to launch a global campaign. This is what we will be discussing in UN Energy on the morning of the 21st, next week. All agencies we're meeting. A number of heads of agencies are coming in the morning, to discuss how we do that campaign. We're going to mount a campaign the same way we have mounted campaigns for HIV/AIDS, for malaria, and so on. And we are already designing it. I've been meeting with heads of states and others, and many of them have told me, you don't have to convince us, we know what we suffer here. Because the challenge is also mobilizing the resources we need to make these things happen. If you don't do the campaign, it is forgotten. Just like we knew HIV/AIDS, malaria, and others, things were forgotten. It's the same way energy needs to come back up, and we need that campaign. We also, politically, we're lobbying now the General Assembly, going to have a number of meetings, to make sure that we declare the year 2012 as the beginning of the decade for energy access. Hopefully, clean, sustainable, renewable energy. 2012. Why 2012? Because it was supposed to be the end of Kyoto. It's very symbolic for us. So we're going to do heavy lobbying. I'm talking to a number of ambassadors here to form the group we call the Friends of Energy. I was a guest speaker to the Friends of Climate Change last year, thanks to my good friend, the ambassador of Denmark. Now we're going to form our own group, the Friends of Energy. I know politics a little bit. If you don't have that political backing, some things cannot happen. So we want to launch the campaign, and we're going to need all of you. It's going to be a big campaign globally. We're talking to media groups, CNN and others. We're designing it just as well as we've done mosquito bed nets, water, and other issues. We need all of you. We're going to use text. I'm talking to Carlos Slim. He hosted my advisory group in Mexico in July. We're just reaching out to kings and princes and to presidents and others. On the evening of the 21st, the Secretary General will be with us. We're having a high-level event in the evening for an hour and a half for some heads of states. What is the topic again? The same thing you're discussing here. We are not stopping anywhere. So in the morning, we do our own work internally. In the evening, we bring the political heavyweights, and the Secretary General will be there. We're very grateful that the Secretary General himself and Ellen Clark and Achim Steiner, myself, we've put our political weights behind this. You know, once I had a dialogue with Ellen Clark and the Secretary General separately, and they said, Kandeh, you don't have to convince us. We are from Asia. We know how to fight poverty. You need to have growth, you need to have trade, and you need energy to power it. So we are fully behind it. And I'm very grateful that Ellen Clark has put now energy access as one of her 8 agenda actions for accelerated action on energy. So my message to you is, within the UN, we've already started putting the building blocks to take your message. What you have been doing as an NGO, as a civil society group, we've put the building blocks. Now we're building the political backing behind it. In addition, we're also going to do programmatic. With the World Bank and others, we want to mobilize resources. Because you might ask me, nice goals, Mr. Director General, where's the money? What does it cost? In this report, and if you give your email addresses to Andy Yeager and Dessa, we'll send it to you. We want to go paperless. We want to save the forest. So we'll send it to you electronically. But we've done all the estimations here. This report, we pulled on the best knowledge and information available, the International Energy Agency, and also McKinsey and others, to do some of our costings, yeah? We say here, based on IEA estimates, that you will need annually between $35 to $40 billion between now and 2030 to achieve this. It's not a whole lot of money. Where does the money come from? I hope that some of the fast start money for climate change, that some of it can go to this cause, because I've shown you the link between climate change and energy access and energy efficiency, but also the long-term finance. You remember that pledge of $100 billion a year? You remember that pledge in Copenhagen? That's good money to start some community-based off-grid solutions. You know, in my village, my small village, my people only need 300 kilowatts. That's all. 300 kilowatts in my village, which is right on the delta of a river that ends into the Atlantic. Just 300 kilowatts. The 600-700 of us in that village, our women do not have to walk 3-4 kilometers to find firewood. And the water will be pumped into the homes. But guess what? They can mill their rice. They can dry their rice. and perhaps reduce post-harvest loss. We've done all of those calculations because there was a big debate amongst us. What is a minimum level of access? Andy Yeager and others, we hosted different experts from around the world. We say, fine, let's give some minimum levels. What about minimum on average, 100 kilowatt hour per person per year? Minimum. For basic needs, lighting, cooking, and refrigeration. All of that is in here. Then we said, but there's another level that is crucial. If you want to do some of what you're saying here, to also have economic development, you need energy for productive use. Why is this important? If I go to my village and I put solar panels for women in that village, it is great. At least we get another 3 hours in the evening for the kids to study and maybe extend our productive life. But guess what? I say to people, that's good in its own individual self. However, that will be shining a light on poverty. Shining a light on poverty, because why? It does not change their income level significantly. We need a modicum of energy that also enhances productivity. And so here we've calculated maybe that is 700 kilowatt hour per person. You think that's a lot? You know how much is used in North America? 9 to 10,000. 9 to 10,000 per person. You and I enjoying that SUV and the air conditioning. Yeah, and if you're lucky, a Cadillac too. Yeah, 9 to 10,000. So what we are asking is not rocket science, and the technologies are known. But I know you have the experts who are dealing with all of this. I was asked as Keynote to do a round robin and touch on everything. My last point I want to touch on is energy governance. For many years, we would not seriously discuss energy issues in the United Nations. I say this on authority, you can check. For many years, immediately we do reforms and restructuring, we push energy to various committees. It's an addendum to the Commission on Sustainable Development. It's an addendum to another commission because we did not want to zero in on energy. I think that luxury is over. The UN is not only for solving crisis. The UN should be also thinking ahead of what could be a problem. Therefore, you must talk about energy governance. Let me tell you why. Because of energy security needs, I decided to write this out a little bit so I don't miss the point. Because I get emotional when I talk about this particular issue, yeah? Because of energy security needs and because of climate change, we are at the cusp of a new energy revolution, perhaps a third industrial revolution. For example, huge investments, over 26 trillion are projected for the world's energy infrastructure, with more than half of that in developing countries. HSBC and Deutsche Bank estimate that green energy investments will top about 500 billion a year, larger than the global aerospace and defense industries combined, and that the clean energy market will be worth perhaps 2 trillion in 10 years. That's a lot of money. That's a whole revolution. However, the question is, how inclusive will the new green industrial revolution be? Will it lift more people out of poverty? Will it ensure a safer world? Why should we be concerned whether it will ensure a safer world, and why would it be inclusive? We know today, based on this MDG review, that almost 150 years after the Industrial Revolution or more, still over 2 billion people live on less than $2 a day. We know today that 1.6 billion have no access to electricity. It was not very inclusive. Will this new one be inclusive? But why also? Because more and more we are discovering energy resources, oil and gas, in some of the poorest countries in the world. Sierra Leone, Mauritania, Chad, and so on and so forth. Is the idea now a new mercantilism that we source and take out? Do these people also not have right to have energy in their community? We must not have another Niger Delta spread around the world. In Niger Delta, for 40 years, we were burning flaring gas. We estimated almost $7 billion a year flared. Instead of being piped to homes, instead of being taken to generating plants to power the economy of Nigeria, 150 million people, they do not even have access to 3,000 megawatts. and Niger Delta is still in darkness, and guess what? There's a rebellion. So, in sourcing energy, we must be concerned about global stability, global governance. This is also being dealt with now at the World Economic Forum. They have a new report out, the Global Reengineering Initiative, led by Malloch Brown and some others. They're calling for regular dialogue on energy issues. They're calling for a new trade deal on new energy technologies to make sure that it is accessible to the poor and to everybody else in the world. I see some hope. Secretary Chu hosted the first Clean Energy Ministerial in July in Washington. A very good initiative by him, looking at what technologies are available, best practices that can be spread around the world. 2 days ago in Vienna, I participated in the EU-Africa Energy Partnership meeting, the first high-level meeting, over 30 ministers and commissioners from Africa and the EU, looking at partnership to spread clean energy technologies. So there are efforts in the US, but also similar initiatives have been announced by China and India and Brazil. So there is an interest to make this new revolution inclusive, but we need what you're doing to do it even more. Otherwise, in 10 years, you will ask the UN to do studies on how Africa and the poorest of the poor missed the new green industrial revolution. Let that not happen. Thank you very much.